of the South African National Off-Road Championship, the Bell Tongaland Challenge in northern KwaZulu-Natal. Final preparations by pit crews are always vital, as just one small oversight can make the difference between success and failure. Final instructions on the route and other formalities by Clerk of the Course Vincent Prithiwi before the mass start on the runway. After 4 rounds of the championship, RP Reyneke and Robin Houghton in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser were leading Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek by 45 points in the production vehicle category.
Wat die kampioenskap aan betref, ons is nou 45 punte voor, wat 'n hele byeenkoms se punte beteken. So ons is nog nie gemaklik voor nie, maar ons hoop om goed te doen in hierdie byeenkoms. As ons moontlike wen hier kan kry, dan lyk die dinge goed na die einde van die jaar toe, na die einde van die seisoen toe.
Tension mounting in the service area, and tension also in the special vehicle category, as father and son Franz Chepek Sr. and Jr. had only a 35-point lead over Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne. Only 9 points separated the next 3 contenders.
Being kind of virgin territory, I can't imagine it'll really favour anything. If it is rough to start off with, well then certainly the frame should have the advantage. You know, new territory, maybe it gets sandy later and long fast stuff, then the trucks will be coming through, so it should be pretty well balanced today.
A huge bike entry as the event combined national and regional competitors. In the 200 category, Clayton Enslin held a solid lead, as did Gray McLaughlin in the 250 class. But things were very tight in the open category, with Errol Delton leading multiple champion Alfie Cox by a mere 2 points.
Well, I'm just going to try and finish the race in a high position. I want to try and win my class, of course. I'm leading Alfie by a very small margin. So I have to beat him in one race and finish second to him in the last 2.
There was a similar tight championship situation in the quad category, with Johan Kruger leading Mark Breckel by a mere 9 points after 4 rounds. Johan Steenkamp was only 3 points adrift in third, with Vickers van Deventer and Christo van der Merwe level pegging in fourth.
Well, I'd say the event's quite the same as the desert. Thick sand and a lot of climbs. Park prepared very well, everything. Just hope for the best.
A spectacular innovation by Tuskers Motorsport Club, as a light aircraft gives the starting signal by flashing its landing lights. The view of the mass start from father and son combination Arthur and Scott Abraham in the huge creepy crawly Ford gives a good idea of the hectic pace at the beginning. It's a mad dash along the runway of Mku's airstrip to a tight left-hander where everybody wants to be first, of course. The spectacular acceleration of Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek's Castrol Toyota Hilux sees them race towards the front in a scene reminiscent of a Grand Prix start. The Hilux, affectionately known as Fred, gets the whole shot as the rest of the field scrambles for position. Even though they're custom built for off-road racing, these vehicles have a tremendous turn of speed, and while the cars are still closely bunched together, it makes for some hairy moments. Not everybody decides to follow the designated route, with Coetzee and Leek leading the way. Some other competitors decided that there might just be some advantage in trying a shortcut. In car with Coetzee and Leek, who brought Fred to the Bell Tongaland instead of the new double cab, which wasn't considered to be quite ready for competition yet. Early trouble for Schilling and Thorne, whose Motortech Jimco stopped at the end of the runway with electrical problems. They did get going a few minutes later. Meanwhile, Coetzee and Leek had problems of their own. Local boys Hilton Laurie and Neville Lowe in their Chenoweth giving chase. Back in the Castrol Toyota Hilux, and the title contenders let the Chenoweth through. There's still a long way to go. A nice battle in the special vehicle category was developing between John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie in their Digidor Porsche, and Bux Carolyn and Kenny Scholthammer in their Raceco. Disappointment for young Scott Abraham, who was making his off-road navigating debut with Dad Arthur, as the engine of the creepy crawly Ford is starting to cry enough. Schilling and Thorne got their Motortech Jimco going again, and the pair was skating through the field in an effort to catch up with the leaders as soon as possible. Back to the start line again, and another spectacular sight as the quads are sent on their way by the light aircraft. Also imitating Grand Prix cars, it was another mad dash to the end of the runway. Each rider trying to get the advantage of turning into the tight left-hander first. Of course, not everyone could do it, and the funnel design of the track at the end of the runway would cause quite a few problems with a number of riders towards the middle and back of the field. Paul Chomsey on his Yamaha Banshee, one of the local entrants, took the early lead and was showing some experienced national riders the way. Chomsey built a bit of a gap over the rest of the field, consisting mostly of national competitors. The riders were still taking it relatively easy, not wanting to ruin their race by doing something stupid, and also playing the tactical game, seeing who's where and doing what. An early casualty was championship leader Johan Kruger.
What seems to be the problem?
No power, no spark. Just dead.
John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie in their Digidor Porsche were effectively leading the car category because although they were behind Rob Walk, the Chepiks and Richard Carolyn, those three had missed the marshal and were in danger of being disqualified. Reyneke and Houghton were just behind Jackie Hubert and Danny Smith, with Coetzee and Leek chasing the Land Cruiser for production vehicle honours. Stanley Illman and Franz Stangl in their race car were taking things fairly easy in the slippery bits that were scattered all over the route after some good rains in recent weeks. Close on their heels were JJ Wolmerans and Tim Calvert in their Blue Chip Racing race car, who also had to keep a wary eye on Nick and Ryan Harper in their Pro-M race car. The local population enjoyed what seemed to be fun and games, but it was definitely nothing of the kind for Cliff Barker and Malcolm Hubert, who saw everybody else go past while they tried to get their Pennzoil Land Rover out of the mud. The water also caused a few stutters from the 2-litre VW engine of Warren and Dave Conway's Dominator Sandmaster. Neil Woolridge and Paul Vermaak had no problems in their Mitsubishi Pajero, nor did Mike Redden and Hein Latergan in their Pennzoil Land Rover. Then it was the turn of the bikes to storm down the runway of Mku's airstrip. The bigger engine machines obviously with the advantage of more power and speed. Not surprisingly, Alfie Cox on his AGA Panasonic Castrol KTM 360 took the lead, but championship leader Errol Dalton on his Shell Honda 500 wasn't going to allow his biggest rival to get away. Marco Cavino was third, followed by Richard Manning, Alex Vels, Grant Bloomfield and Darryl Curtis. Back to the cars, and by now Reyneke and Houghton and Coetzee and Leek had broken clear of the field as they battled for the effective lead. It was good, high-speed stuff over the plains of northern KwaZulu-Natal. Wolmerans and Calvert were going steady in their Blue Chip Racing race car, the 3.5-litre Porsche engine merrily singing along. Lambert and Fourie were pushing their Digidor Porsche as hard as it would go, while local boys Mark Laurie and Warren Morton were doing the same, eventually winning their regional class. Barker and Hubert eventually got themselves out of the mud and the Pennzoil Land Rover was flying. They'd already passed the Pajero of Woolridge and Vermaak, who had the other Pennzoil Land Rover, the diesel turbo of Redden and Latergan, hot on their heels. That's the little SVM Jeep of Mark Corbett and John Moore. The lubrication equipment race car of Bux Carolyn and Kenny Scholthammer was chasing down the leading pack of special vehicles. The route took the form of a 500-kilometer loop eastward to Mbazwana and north towards Tembe Elephant Park. Shamir Variawa and Layakat Khan were trading carefully in their AV Racing Chenoweth Porsche. Chris Boucher indicating to Roy Slubber in which direction he has to point his race car. In the motorcycle category, Alfie Cox had taken his customary position in the overall and open class lead, pulling away from the rest of the field with ease and arriving at the control point long before any other rider. Lying second overall and leading the 250 class was Darryl Curtis on his AGA Panasonic Castrol KTM, while points leader Errol Dalton on his Shell Honda 500 was trying hard to catch Cox, not wanting to lose his championship lead. Some of the puddles were small enough not to bother the riders in the least. Gray McLaughlin on his Shell Honda was lying third in the 250 class behind Curtis and Vowles. Behind him, Alan Julian and Greg Aspinall were battling to catch the other 250s ahead of them. Elmer Simons on his Shell Racing Honda was trying to stay in touch with his teammates. In the 200cc category, another Shell Racing Honda was leading, this one with Wayne Farmer in control. Marco Cavina on his Shimwell's Yamaha 280 was going strong in the open class, while privateer Quentin Milton was right up there at the front on his Kawasaki 200, second in class. This innocent-looking puddle had some hidden surprises, as Christopher van der Merwe found out. Third in the quads, Van der Merwe could kick himself. Careful, Skalkberger doesn't seem to be bothered by the possibility of a spin. Neither does it cause any headaches for John Craig Costello. Sixth at this stage was Anton Hoffman of the Jojo Tanks team. Controversy following them missing a control point, the Chepiks in their V-Motors racecar were ahead on the road. In the same boat, Rob Walk in his Super Pave racecar. Richard Carolyn in the single-seater lubrication equipment racecar, also with a sword of possible exclusion over his head, was third on the road. The ding-dong battle for the lead was continuing between Reineke and Houghton and Coetzee and Leek, with the two teams swapping the effective lead at various points along the route. It was important for Coetzee and Leek to beat the Land Cruiser crew in order to close the gap between them in the championship battle. Carolyn and Scholtheimer in their lubrication equipment racecar were pushing hard, now effectively lying third behind the two production vehicles. Parker and Joubert in the Pennzoil Land Rover had succeeded in catching up most of the time. They lost in the mud, but they just couldn't shake off the attentions of Lambert and Fourie in their Digital Porsche. This was turning into another great battle on the Bell Trans-Tongaland Challenge. Staying with the front bunch, Mike Redden and Hein Lateghan in the Class E Turbo Diesel Pennzoil Land Rover were in the top 16 and third in class. Despite starting an hour after the cars, some of the leading bike riders were catching and passing some of the back markers in the car category. Greg Aspinall has dropped back from the leaders in the 250 class and was lying sixth. With the amount of rain the previous few weeks, some parts of the route were very slippery, as Roy Slubbert and our cameraman soon found out. A flat right front didn't help steering at all. Richard Everingham and Alvin Rocher in their ETT Bushmaster powered by a 2-litre Mazda engine were giving some of the big names a run for their money. Second in Class E, defending champions Llewellyn Anthony and Chris Birkin in their Toyota Hilux 2.8 Turbo Diesel were pushing hard to catch the class leaders Woolridge and Vermaak in the Mitsubishi Pajero, also with a turbo diesel engine. See the clean car? See it now. Second in class in the regional championship with Derek Kleinans and Mark Flack. An impressive sight, an off-road special vehicle in full flight. JJ Wolmans and Tim Calvert lying third in their class. Oops, forget the camera. Another impressive sight, Alfie Cox in full cry, leading the motorcycle category overall as well as the open class on his AGA Panasonic Castrol KTM 360. Still holding station in second place overall and leading the 250 class, Darryl Curtis on another AGA Panasonic Castrol KTM. Wow, some bike control. Not far behind, in fact just about 2 minutes, is Alex Vowles on his Ant-Alex Dairy KTM 250. While Toyota 1000 Desert Race winner Gray McLaughlin is lying fourth overall and third in class on his Shell Honda. And look at this, Greg Aspinall has caught up with Alan Julian again. These two are battling it out for sixth overall. Second in the 500 class and lying fifth overall, championship leader Errol Dalton on his Shell Honda. He seemed set to lose his points lead over Cox. Elmer Simons was having a great race on his Shell Honda and was lying just behind Julian and Aspinall. Still leading the 200 class and moving up on the overall standings was Wayne Farmer on another Shell Racing Honda. His smooth and fast style has often stood him in good stead. And here's another great battle. Defending champ in the 200 class, Rian van der Kerk, with Quinton Milton all over him, fighting for second in class. Back to the quad category, and Jacques Struwig on his Jojo Tanks Honda 330 in the lead, demonstrating his supreme fitness and skill as he pushes his quad as hard as it would go. Unbeknown to him at this point, Struwig also faces exclusion for missing 2 control points. As does David Parkinson on the exclusive space Yamaha Banshee 350 for the same reason, adding to the controversy that would follow at the end of the race. Which meant that, also unbeknown to him, Christopher van der Merwe on his Joburg Yamaha Banshee was effectively leading the quads overall. Privateer Johan Horn on his Yamaha Blaster, effectively negotiating the muddy conditions. Getting towards the end of the race now, and still first on the road without knowing about their pending disqualification, the Chepiks approached the waterhole. Having won every event which they entered this year, the Bell Tongaland wouldn't be their race. They did get out of here though. Second on the road, Richard Carolyn wasn't about to get stuck and attacked the mud hole head on. Reyneke and Houghton in the Toyota dealer team Land Cruiser was by now comfortably ahead, Coetzee and Leek having rolled their Castrol Hilux and made full use of their four-wheel drive advantage. After first getting lost and then running out of petrol, Rob Walk in the Super Pave Raceco was taking it very easy through the mud. The crowds were enjoying the antics of the cars and their crews, especially when Bux Carolyn and Kenny Scholtjammer decided to put up a bit of a show. They were now effectively second behind Reyneke and Houghton. Lambert and Fourie in the Digidor Porsche had consolidated their position and were effectively third overall and second in class. With the results still provisional, Reyneke and Houghton took their third victory in the production category of the year, extending their championship lead over Coetzee and Leek, who finished fifth. Bark and Joubert took a well-deserved second.
Ja, ons is baie tevrede en baie gelukkig met ons vertoning. Ons het nou nog ons voorsprong so 'n bietjie meer vergroot op die nasionale kampioenskappe. Baie lekker roete. Ek het dit baie lekker geniet.
A number of protests are still under consideration about the overall and special category results, but provisionally Carolyn and Scholthammer took the win ahead of Lambert and Fourie.
We crossed the line first. We finished ahead of everybody else. But out there today was a bit of a picnic. The marking was a little bit poor in places. Some people seem to take wrong turns and be short of marshal points. I'm not sure whether we aren't at this stage. But there's talk of it maybe, and then we don't know who's going to be the overall winner at this stage.
There was no doubt about the motorcycle category though, with Alfie Cox the clear leader. The riders generally took the mud hole much slower, being very careful of the slippery surface. Darryl Curtis had a comfortable lead in the 250 class and was still lying second overall, about 6 minutes behind Cox. Alex Vowles was about 3 minutes behind, second in class and third overall, and also wasn't about to throw it all away. Ray McLachlan, third in the 250s behind Curtis and Vowles, was the quickest through the mud. The event wreaked havoc with the quad races with only 2 finishes in the end. Struwig didn't know it yet, but he would also be excluded, and getting stuck here was probably the start of his frustration. Fortunately, help was at hand. Errol Dalton would lose his 2-point lead over Cox by finishing 5th overall and 2nd in the open class. So, Cox retakes the lead in the Motorcycle Championship with an overall and class win, while Dalton finished more than half an hour behind in 5th. Curtis took the 250 class. Pending the outcome of protests over the disqualifications, Christopher van der Merwe took the victory over the only other finisher, John Craig Costello.